What in the world is happening with King County real estate? Let's check it out in this month's edition of Did I Stutter? That's right. Last month we talked about this happening, and it happened. I can't believe one of the things I said might happen happened. It's unbelievable. All right, so what is it that happened? Well, look at that big old green line, man, at the end here. This is May, the number of new listings in May. This is the supply and demand chart, as always. Green is the supply, number of new listings. Blue is the demand, the number of homes that got sold, went under contract in any given month for the last 2 years. And this huge green line indicates there were more listings that came to market in May than in the last 2 years. In fact, you got to go back to 2021 to see this many. Okay, we're not at pre-pandemic levels, but we're at pandemic levels of inventory, this is a lot of inventory compared to the last 2 years when interest rates tripled. That's what you want to note. In January 2023, interest rates tripled, went from 3 to whatever, 2.5 to 7. Big deal. It was everyone stopped selling because no one can afford to go from a 2.5% mortgage to a 7% mortgage. So all those people were off the market. Well, looky, they're back. Okay. Now, buyers still can't buy. And they can't buy at the current prices because interest rates are still 7%. So buyers, that's a really flat bar for buyers. Now, it's a little bit more than last year, but it's just a skosh more. This delta between new listings and pending listings, we don't see that in the last 2 years in recent memory. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that if you are selling, you're selling with more competition and less buyers than any time in the last 2 years. And if you're buying, you have more choices with less competition for you as a buyer than any time in the last 2 years. That is, and we were waiting for this to happen last month when we looked. We're like, well, it hadn't shown up in prices yet, but bam, first down in price, April to May. There's April to May there. Right? May is usually a little bit up. Prices usually come down in the summer. Again, I don't know why people think selling in the summer is better. It's bullshit. It's total bullshit. You see it in the median sales price every year. So it just happened a little earlier this year that median sales price is down in King County and the month supply is up. First time we're over 3 months. First time there's been over 3 months of supply in King County that's 3 years. More supply than any time in the last 3 years. That's a big deal. Now, the question is, does June continue this trend? May or June, historically, is this May? Yeah, May or June are usually the most number of listings, okay? Can't tell. Sometimes it's June. Here, this was June. It's just a skosh over. So, can't tell if this is going to be more listings or less listings. But what we do know is if you're selling now in King County, you need to price very aggressively. You will not get the buyers to look at your house, nor will you get the buyers to offer on your house if you are even priced a skosh over market value. There's just no reason for them to do that. There's more houses that they can look at. And what's predictable is buyers are going to go away in the summer. Look, every year buyers go away in the summer. Really, really typical. Buyers go down in the summer. Again, the time to list is February, March, April, not May, June, July. But here we are. If you've got a list, be aggressive. Be aggressive. Okay. If you're buying, woohoo, baby, you got a good summer ahead of you because all these listings are going to set predictably. And if there's less listings in June, there's still going to be likely more listings in June than any time in the last 2 years. So you're going to wind up with all this inventory in July, all this inventory in August that's been sitting, ripening, ready for their price drops, ready for you to move in. My buyers, I am coaching them to cool their jets, to slow down and wait because it's coming. We are now looking at increase in inventory. We're still a seller's market. And every house is different and every place is different. So don't take this to mean what you should do. What you should do is call me so we can talk about what you should do, because everyone's different. But this is the meta context for our market. It is more competitive to sellers than it's been any time in the last 2 years. Okay. That's what you need to know about that. All right. And if you're buying, it's been the easiest time to buy in any time in the last 2 years. If you got questions about your situation, because you should, call me. Let me know what I can do for you. Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company at eXp Realty. Party on, Wayne. Hey, what in the world is happening with Kitsap County real estate? Well. Let's check it out. This is interesting because it's different than the three surrounding counties we've looked at: Snohomish, Pierce, and King. There are more listings. Green is the number of new listings that came to market. Blue is the number of homes that went under contract. So more listings, but it's not that many more listings than last year. Okay. In the other counties, it was well above last year's high. This time we got there, that's probably, that's May, same May, right? So, and the buyers are down a little bit. So from last year. So what does this mean to you? Well, if you're selling a home in Kitsap, you're at the high point of inventory for the year. You're going against the most competition. So you got to price it like you have more competition. Why? Because you do. And you have less buyers than you did last year. And what's predictable is there'll be less buyers next month and next month and next month. Now we're on a downward slide of buyers till the end of the year. The rate is to be determined, but what's predictable is it'll be less and less buyers each month with less and less listings. Now, last year, June really fell off compared to May. Let's see. Yeah, the year before, June was up. So where does June fall this year? That's always sort of a variable in these seasonal questions, because June is sometimes higher than May and sometimes lower than May. You can't really tell. The rest of it's fairly predictable. From June, you're going to wind up with less and less inventory and less buyers to the end of the year. You just are. So we shall see what June brings. But in the meantime, if you're selling a home in Kitsap County, you need to be really careful how you price it. You need to price it under market to get the attention of the fewer buyers that are there and to stand out above the competition. And if you're buying, I'd wait till July, frankly. I mean, if you found the dream home, great, but you're likely to get the benefit of this excess, what is turning out to be excess inventory in July and August. You'll be able to make better deals. So everything is dependent on the house and the neighborhood, and you definitely don't want to make any decisions on your own. Call me. Let's take a look at it. But in terms of the overview, the meta, you are really looking at a more inventory than we've seen in the last 2 years. Fewer buyers, way better for buyers than it is for sellers. Let me know what questions you have about your particular situation. That's what I'm here for. Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company at eXp. Party on, Wayne. See you next month. Hey, what in the world is happening with Pierce County real estate? Let's check it out. This is super interesting if you like numbers. You're looking at the supply and demand graph for Pierce County. Green is the supply, number of new listings that came to market. Blue is the demand, number of homes that went under contract. Last 2 years. What do you see? Well, the big green line on the right represents more listings came to market than any time in the last 2 years. We are now not at pre-pandemic, but in fact, pandemic levels of inventory. This was a question last month because Pierce County hadn't caught up or wasn't a match for King County. Pierce County usually mirrors King County pretty closely. Well, it does this month. In other words, May has outperformed the last 2 years any month, which wasn't the case in April. April was strong, but wasn't better. Anyway, here's the point. There's more listings, more houses to choose from in Pierce County than any time in the last 2 years. And buyers up a skosh, a little bit, but not a ton. That's a fairly flat buyer graph, right? So what does that wind up meaning? Well, a couple things. One is, if you're selling, you got to price it really conservatively. You got to price it under market to get buyers, because there's going to be more buyers. There's going to be more listings, more choices than any time in the last 2 years. Now, the disparity is not the same as it is in King County. This is tighter, but it's getting there. I don't know what June is going to bring. It would not be surprising to see June bring the same or maybe even a little bit more. It's probably going to be a little bit less, but it could be a little bit more of number of listings. It's pretty typical. And buyers will start to fade away in June, typically, which means you've got to price it really well. Now, if you're buying in Pierce County, I would cool my jets. I would wait to see what June brings and then start scooping up value in July and August when all those homes have aged nicely and they're sitting there and there's nothing wrong with them. They're great houses, but they've got 30 days on market in July. Oh, you're ready for some price drops. I'm telling all my buyers to slow down. Now, if you're listing, list it really, really conservatively in price. Pick up the buyers that are there. We're still at the top end. The 3.5 months of inventory in Pierce County. So it's 6 months is a balanced market. So it's certainly in a seller's market, but it's moving up. Okay. This is an unwinding of the last 2 years with the interest rate hikes. This is now people have a pent up selling demand and they're all coming to market at once. Meantime, if you're selling, be conservative, be careful, be very accurate with your pricing. If you're buying, let's get in there. Let's not get in there. Let's wait. I'd wait till July. If you don't have to move, you're going to have more value in July. There's going to be more listings, less buyers. Some of them are going to be aged. If you can wait, I would wait. Anyway, everyone's situation is different. Everyone's unique. Let me know what I can do for you. I'd love to talk to you about your situation. Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company over at eXp Realty. Party on, Wayne. Hey, party people. Let's check it out. What in the world's happening with Snohomish County real estate? Well, look at this. Okay, this is supply and demand last 2 years, as always. Green is supply, number of new listings. Blue is demand, number of homes on the market. Number of homes that came off the market under contract. And like the counties before it, King and Pierce, you see pandemic levels of inventory. In other words, the last 2 years, after interest rates tripled, inventory, number of new listings went off the shelf, big decline, right, to previous. This is pandemic levels. Not pre-pandemic, but it's more homes listed than any time in the last 2 years. That's not great if you're selling. That means there's a lot of competition. And the buyers do not match that kind of delta. Buyers are up a little bit, but they're not up the same amount as listings. In other words, people stopped selling in 2023 when interest rates tripled because they had nowhere to go. You'd have to pay 3 times the same amount to get the same house. They've held their breath for 2 years and they can't hold it anymore. They need to sell their house, and they are. Buyers, however, are still constrained by the same factor of 6.5%, 7% interest rate. There's not as many of them as there were during the pandemic. So you can see buyers are pretty solid across the board, really similar in amount. It's the big variable is the amount of inventory. So if you are listing your home, this is why I always tell people do not list your home in the summer. It's dumb. If you list your home now, you're going to have more competition to deal with. You just are, meaning you are going to need to deal with price in a way that makes your house stand out from the competition. If you're buying, honestly, I'm telling my buyers to wait till July. I want to see what happens in June. I want to see all that extra inventory sitting on the market. I want to give them all those choices. I mean, if the perfect house comes to market, que bueno, go, jump. But you should feel fairly confident that July, I mean, who knows what happens with the market, with anything, but this trend certainly looks like there's going to be a lot of choices for buyers in July. So if you're listing in June, do not be one of those houses that's sitting out there waiting for a buyer in July, because you're just going to be looking at price cut after price cut. So every house is different. Every buyer situation is different. I'm totally available to help anyone with their specific needs. That's what I do. But the overall context of the market is there's more available inventory than there is price or buy accordingly. Let me know what I can do for you. Aaron Hendon at Christine and Company with eXp Realty. Party on, Wayne. Vashon, Vashon, Vashon. What in the world's happening with Vashon Real Estate? Well, let's check it out. All right. Here you're looking at the last 2 years of supply and demand on Vashon. You got the green as the supply, number of new listings, blue is the demand, number of homes that went under contract. And as you can see, in the last 3 months, there has been more inventory coming to market than virtually any time in the last 3 years. Excuse me, 2 years. And the buyers are pretty standard for this time of year. So you've got a bigger delta. In fact, last month there were more houses and less buyers than almost any month except one in the last 2 years. Meaning, what does that mean to you? Well, more inventory means more choices. From a buyer's point of view, it means more choices. From a seller's point of view, it means more competition. Excuse me. So if you're selling on Vashon right now, you got to price it right because there's just more houses to choose from. And if you're buying on Vashon, frankly, I would wait till June or July, because June is predictable that it'll be really close to May. Historically, it'll be either a little bit above, a little bit below May in terms of number of listings, which means that's 4 months of strong listing activity, meaning there's going to be a lot more to choose from in July and August, which ultimately means you're going to have more leverage for the price you want. So if you're listing, list it conservatively. You don't have the buyers and you have more competition. And if you're buying, I would be picky. I would cool my jets, slow my heels, slow my roll. Just give yourself a chance to see what comes to market in June. And then in July, August, start picking them off, see what's there. Okay. Because buyers are predictably going to go down from now to the end of the year, as will listings. But June, is good likelihood that it stays really, really strong, which means there's a lot to choose from. So every house is different. Every buying situation is different. Everyone needs something different. So let me know what questions you have about your situation. That's what I'm here for. Aaron Hendon with Christine Company at eXp. Party on, Wayne. See you next month.